Donald Trump and his 18 co-defendants, co-conspirators, as the Democrats are calling him, must surrender in 9 days to the Fulton County Jail. There will be no special treatment. Trump will receive a mugshot and be held in a disgusting jail that is so bad, leftists are even bringing it up right now, that the conditions are horrifying and that some people have actually died there. They want Donald Trump and, his chief of staff, his lawyers, to surrender themselves to this facility. And this is what we're waiting for. And I have a question. My question is, what happens if Donald Trump does not surrender? Alongside this, Ron DeSantis has come out and said it's partly Trump's own fault. And you know what? Ron DeSantis is right. Donald Trump could have fired many of these people. Donald Trump could have gone after Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump didn't want to fire certain intelligence agency individuals because he was concerned of political backlash. He didn't want to go after Hillary Clinton because he was concerned about political backlash. And he opened the door. He said, don't worry, go do your thing. And now they are gutting and ripping apart this country to go after him. So my question is this. With the news about Ron DeSantis saying that Trump shares some of the blame here, Ron DeSantis is explicitly stating that the charges against Trump are unjust, they're wrong, that Donald Trump could have done something to stop it by weeding out the Soros prosecutors. So here's my question for Ron DeSantis. If Donald Trump seeks safe harbor in Florida, refusing to surrender, will you extradite? Or will you allow federal forces under the Biden administration to seek to remove Donald Trump and extradite? This is unprecedented. I have no idea what happens. Maybe many of you do, but my question is this. Donald Trump goes to Mar-a-Lago. He publicly announces that he will not surrender to false charges. Many of his former staff and his lawyers, co-conspirators, they say the same thing. These are fake charges, and we refuse to abide by these demands. Already, Mark Meadows has filed to have the case moved to a federal court so that he can argue the supremacy clause and basically quash the whole thing. So why would they travel to Georgia to surrender to charges that they think are fake? Well, I don't know what's going to happen. I got to say, I think the most likely scenario is that Donald Trump and all the defendants just surrender. But it got me thinking. If Donald Trump stays in Florida, what happens if he just says no? Georgia's a red state, supposedly, but, kind of shifts blue, or it's shifting blue. And so I wonder how this would play out. I don't have the answers. Donald Trump travels only to red states from now on, avoiding connections in blue states, or flies private only between red states. Red states refuse to extradite. Blue states agree to extradite. It wouldn't even be so simple. Some red states would absolutely extradite. Would any? I don't know. This is the news. Trump is expected to be booked at Fulton County Jail. Amazing. Former President Donald Trump is expected to surrender at the Fulton County Jail, the local sheriff said Tuesday in a statement, along with the other 18 co-defendants charged on Monday in the Georgia 2020 election subversion case. Trump, who was charged with 13 counts, including racketeering, has not publicly indicated when he intends to surrender ahead of the August 25th deadline imposed by Fulton County DA Fani Willis. The statement from the Fulton County Sheriff's Office addressed the key question of where the former president would be arrested and processed as a criminal defendant. Quote, at this point, based on guidance received from the district attorney's office and presiding judge, it is expected that all 19 defendants named in the indictment will be booked at the Rice Street Jail, the statement said. Keep in mind, defendants can turn themselves in at any time. The jail is open 24/7. Also, due to the unprecedented nature of this case, some circumstances may change with little to no warning. Most defendants charged in Fulton County are typically booked at the Fulton County Jail. Fulton County Sheriff Pat Labatt previously suggested he wants to treat the defendants charged in the Trump election subversion case the same as any other defendant would be treated. Unless someone tells me differently, we will be following normal practices. It doesn't matter your status. We will have mugshots ready for you. That's impossible. Donald Trump has Secret Service protection. Some have suggested if Donald Trump does not submit to the charges, the Secret Service will be obligated to apprehend and bring him in. I do not believe that is true. That's outside the jurisdiction of the Secret Service to arrest the president himself. But I don't know. That could be wrong. They say the sheriff will now have to negotiate with Secret Service and Trump's attorneys on the logistics of Trump's surrender. Defendants who are not immediately arrested upon indictment, as was the case for Trump and his associates, usually negotiate bond if applicable, as well as other terms of release with the district attorney's office. Rudy Giuliani, Trump's former lawyer, who was also charged in the case, said Tuesday on WABC Talk Radio that he would pick a day next week to surrender to authorities, adding, "There has to be bail, I imagine. Kind of silly for me to have bail. I mean, I showed up there voluntarily and testified." The 41-count indictment unsealed Monday night lays out a sweeping investigation led by Willis into some of the most egregious efforts by Trump's allies to meddle in the 2020 election. Blah, blah. We get it. And this is the big question. The question of whether or not we accelerate, escalate, or whether or not Trump simply surrenders to all of this. DeSantis says Trump shares blame for legal troubles because he had 3 years to fire FBI Chief Christopher Wray, let Hillary Clinton off the hook, and failed to fire Soros-backed prosecutors. A bold statement, Ron DeSantis. A bold statement. I like Ron DeSantis. I really do. I just think he's running a bad campaign. He could do better. He's got to pick things up. But I said this with the federal indictments. I said this with the New York indictments. Donald Trump could go to Florida and Ron DeSantis could earn massive public support from Trump supporters and from Trump himself. If Ron DeSantis comes out right now and says, Donald J. Trump lives in Florida at Mar-a-Lago, and if he is at home in Mar-a-Lago, I will not have state police or law enforcement seek to apprehend and extradite him. These charges are trumped up. These charges are political, and we will not play a role, nor will I allow any law enforcement to enter Florida territory for the purpose of extraditing Donald Trump. Could you imagine if Ron DeSantis said that? Well, here's the play, Donald Trump. Put Ron DeSantis to the test. You go to Florida and you say, what say you, Ron DeSantis? And there's the question. Will Ron DeSantis simply say, no, I'm sorry, Donald, I can't get involved in this conflict with Georgia. You know, they're a neighboring state to the north. And so we're going to have no choice but to have you arrested due to our agreements with Georgia. You will be arrested. You will be driven to the jail where you will sit in a jail cell. This is unprecedented stuff. The conversation around civil war has been bubbling up. And oh boy, everybody's got me on their minds. I have been trending since yesterday. It's funny, though, they say I'm trending, but I'm not really trending. It's like in this sphere I am. I'd love to be trending nationwide or worldwide. It's rarely. It's happened a few times, but rarely. But everyone in this space is asking the question about whether or not I am correct in my assessment about civil war. Well, look, I mean, it's not. I didn't make this up, okay? It was that Princeton professor who said you're in a cold civil war. And it's an unoriginal idea coming from me. I just happen to say it a lot because I agree with many of these people. But we can defer to Stephen Marsh. Smart guy. I had a great conversation with him. He's more of a liberal, multicultural democracy guy. He's Canadian, by the way. And he says we are in civil strife. Civil strife is the period that occurs just before civil war. And I think he is 100% correct. That is to say, Bleeding Kansas. Bleeding Kansas was a 7-year period that happened just before the American Civil War, where people were killing each other in Kansas over whether or not Kansas would become a slave or a free state. Ultimately, as the conflict escalated, you entered nationwide conflict with the start of the Civil War. But most people don't think of Bleeding Kansas as the start of the Civil War, but Bleeding Kansas is 100% the Civil War period. Semantics, whatever. Call it whatever you want. I don't know. I think that depending on what happens next determines whether or not history will write about the communist revolution, the neo-Marxist revolution in the United States, the rise of the military dictatorship. This could go the way of the Spanish Civil War. It could go the way of Weimar Germany. It could go the way of the Bolshevik Revolution. It could go the way of the American Civil War. I honestly have no idea what happens. I can tell you this. This next week is critical in determining where we go. Think about it this way. Right now, leftist neo-Marxist forces are demanding that leadership in the MAGA faction, whatever you want to call it, surrender without dispute, without conflict. Surrender. Literal surrender. Lay down. Give up. It's over. Now, of course, Trump and the 18 other defendants may say this is but a battle in a legal war of a cold civil war, and so we will to keep tensions calm. But that's critical. What if Trump says, I refuse to surrender? Give me liberty or give me death or something like this. Trump's refusal to surrender will crank the dial up past 11. That's all I can say. I mean, think about the ramifications of Trump and any of these co-defendants not surrendering. Now, there's a few of the defendants that are local election officials. They're not the most prominent of individuals, but you have the chief of staff to the president that they're trying to bring in to surrender. Let me make this as clear as I can. I don't know what will happen. I don't know what you call the period we're in, but I can say that neo-Marxist forces are seeking to arrest the former presidential administration. We're beyond the president having his political rival arrested. And we are now at the point where neo-Marxist forces seek the surrender of the previous administration. That's right. Trump's lawyers, his former chief of staff, and an attorney for the State Department. Acting Attorney General? Let me make sure I get this. I have this correct here. That's Jeffrey Clark. I believe Jeffrey Clark, and I'm going to double check here just because I want to make sure I have this former acting assistant attorney general. Okay, there we go. That's important. Neo-Marxist forces in Georgia demand the surrender of a presidential administration and the front runner against Joe Biden. Call it whatever you want. Whatever. Fine, I don't care. Civil war? Maybe not. Maybe not civil war if they all just bow their heads and say, we're sorry. Will Donald Trump and these lawyers hang their heads in shame, be placed in handcuffs, trotted into a jail cell where they are looked in the eyes and said, you lose. You have no power here. Goodbye. Maybe they'll give him bail. Maybe they won't. Already arguments have been made that Donald Trump has violated the terms of bail in the federal case against him brought by Jack Smith. That by posting on Truth Social, he is intimidating witnesses and therefore should be remanded. In fact, the judge in that case has a quote where she laments the fact that Donald Trump remains free. So, will Donald Trump surrender? I think it's entirely possible that Trump gets remanded in a place like Georgia. These people are a bit more zealous, but that is the question. Would Ron DeSantis or any other Republican defend the freedom of these individuals and refuse them to be jailed and extradited? I mean, if Republicans like DeSantis, McCarthy, and any other member of Congress, if they're coming out and saying this is a political attack and the charges are BS, why would we expect Trump or anyone to surrender? But you know what? I think they will. I think they will because perhaps Mike Cernovich is correct about this. I give you his tweets. Mike Cernovich says, my only disagreement with Timcast assessment of it being a civil war is that would imply two sides fighting. We are instead in the pre-genocide phase of U.S. history. Conservatives and Trump supporters are depersonalized and rounded up. This is from Genocide Watch. Okay. What does his post from Genocide Watch say? 1. Classification. Yes, this meme has gone around quite a bit. And it was going around a few years ago. So let's break it down. Classification. Identifying the group of people for whom you want to remove. Yes, maggots, they call them. Trump supporters, Trumpians. Okay. Symbolization. What does that mean? The MAGA symbol, Trump's hair, the red hat. Ah, there it is. An easy way to determine who they are. Discrimination. Well, of course. People have been fired from their jobs. They have been banned off social media. Dehumanization. Oh, yeah, we already mentioned that. The maggots. Organization. You're talking about the far left groups that have formed groups like Rose City Antifa and other Antifa factions that have engaged in widespread violence, vandalism, and even murder in some instances and have faced almost no accountability. Polarization, that one's obvious. Preparation, call it whatever you want. Persecution, extermination, and denial. You could probably apply something like this to a lot of different groups or a lot of different people. So I don't know if it's true or whatever. Symbolism. They're just saying, these could be what's happening right now. And you can apply this stuff to a lot of people, I suppose. But based on how the government is handling things, I'd certainly say it's not Antifa who's being persecuted, but the polarization is happening right before our eyes. In this tweet from Hans Mank, I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, he says, "These messages are from the time period while Trump was president. Meanwhile, Durham wasn't even allowed to see and didn't want to see thousands of messages exchanged among Hillary Clinton's Russiagate operatives. Calling this Banana Republic stuff is an insult to Banana Republics." Marina Medvin says feds have Trump's DMs, even deleted ones, and unsent drafted tweets. That's right. The Democratic regime, I don't know if you can call it democratic. That's so silly. But I guess you can call North Korea the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or whatever it is they call it. They have Donald Trump's private messages that he sent on Twitter. Apparently, some of them are very stupid. Like, I guess there's a picture of a taco salad or something like that. I don't know. But hold on. How do the feds have Donald Trump's communications? That's amazing. And, to be honest, it's partly Trump's fault. He allowed this festering mole to grow under his own presidency. And now they're going to excise him. They have his private messages. Oh, boy. Nothing is sacred. Where does this go, my friends, is the ultimate question. Seeing all of this happen, seeing that an excellent point made by Hans, Durham didn't look at Hillary Clinton's communications. That's incredible. The Russiagate hoax. What about Ukraine? Nothing. Mike Cernovich pointed out the other day that the Republicans have a comparable majority in the House that Nancy Pelosi did. And Nancy Pelosi was able to wage war on Donald Trump and his supporters. And Republicans right now are doing nothing. And a lot of people said this last night. We talked about it on Timcast IRL. They said that Kevin McCarthy's got no balls. I said, are you kidding? That dude's got ironclad testicles, balls of steel, to look into the eyes of Trump supporters and conservatives and Republicans and say, I'm fighting for you, and then turn around with a gigantic demonic grin laughing all the way back to his uniparty hangout where he's like, don't worry, those morons believed every word. So therein lies the question. Perhaps it is not a civil war. Perhaps Cernovich is correct, but I've brought this point up before. Civil war implies two factions are fighting, two or more factions, and that's not what we have. But I must disagree with Mike Cernovich. I must disagree. Let's have the conversation, Mike. I think you're a really, really smart guy, and you are correct about so much of this. My disagreement is superficial. He says that his disagreement with me is that it's not a civil war because two sides are fighting. It would imply two or more sides are fighting. The reason I disagree with you is because the actions being taken by the government right now could lead to the instability of rising factions around the country. I think the border plays a large role in this. It is not simple to say civil war means that Trumpian factions fight with neo-Marxist factions. No. There could be a group of people in Arizona who don't care at all about Donald Trump, only care about the border. They're growing angry that traffickers are bringing children and drugs over the border. They can't seem to get any action done, so they form a militarized faction. Some of these factions already exist. There were stories about the Minutemen, I think they called themselves, years ago. What happens when this faction comes up, forms border barriers and border checkpoints, and starts enforcing the law as they see fit to protect their community, thinking that Joe Biden has abandoned them completely? The federal government then does what? Tries to arrest them? What happens when these people say, we don't recognize your failed authority, you have no jurisdiction here? Sure, the feds can then sweep in with federal law enforcement and a massive showing of force, Waco or otherwise. But the issue is, what happens when this pops up all over the country? We've already seen Chaz. We've already seen the George Floyd Autonomous Zone. There have already been instances where people have succeeded in separating themselves from local law enforcement. Question: does it stop there? Perhaps it does. I don't know what the future holds. I'm not psychic. However, as Phil Labonte likes to say, where's the off-ramp? And I agree with him. There's no off-ramp. You know, there are these people, they like to post screenshots of my tweets where I said Civil War, Civil War, Civil War. I don't know if the intention there is to insult me for saying it. Perhaps it is, to mock me for saying it. But the funny thing is, all they're doing is proving that I was correct in my assessment of escalation. When I say in 2019 that the things they're doing are leading towards civil war, then in 2020, you get the mass rioting. And I say, this is leading to civil war. Perhaps we're already in one, civil war period. And then January 6th happened. And I loved this one. Ryan Long came on the show. And it was kind of an ambush. I like Ryan. He's a friend. But right when we start the show, he goes, what's up with this civil war talk, Tim? You last time I was here, you had me freaked out because you were talking about all this stuff happening. And where's the civil war? And then I just said, stone-faced, on January 6th, 800 Trump supporters stormed their way up the stairs of the Capitol building, fighting with police and tearing down barricades. The police shot and killed a veteran, Ashley Babbitt. On the other side of the building, police opened the doors, allowing several people into the Capitol. This disrupted the Electoral College vote count. Yeah, so where is it? I don't know. Perhaps that was a large component of it. I find it absolutely hilarious that the liberals and leftists would seek to insult me for having said civil war was coming, or that we were on a path towards one, or we were in a cold civil war. And then for the entirety of 2021, they screamed that Donald Trump tried to lead a coup against the United States, an insurrection. They actually used insurrection provisions in the Constitution to strip politicians of their right to hold office. Coy Griffin. Read that story. And now, as if their brains are suffering intense amnesia, they forget all of these things already happened. So let me break it down for you, my friends. Where are we now? In the lead up to Donald Trump's election, there were several extreme instances of violence, people being beaten in the street. In one instance, a man tried to take the gun from a police officer with the intention of killing Donald Trump. Don't remember that story? Wow, crazy. But a lot of people say, hey, look, man, RFK, JFK, political leaders have been assassinated before. Okay, so maybe it's not civil war. Right. But we're escalating towards one. After Donald Trump is elected, Hillary Clinton, during the campaign for Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton accuses Trump of secretly working for Russia. Her campaign funds the Steele dossier. Allegations are made that Donald Trump was a Soviet agent. I'm not saying Russian, Soviet. Jonathan Chait goes on MSNBC, and there's a possibility that Trump has been working for Russia since the 80s. Yeah, during the Soviet Union. Interesting. This leads to Trump's administration being cuffed, weighted down with the investigation. Trump says he can't fire people because there's special counsel investigating him as to whether or not he's a Soviet spy secretly trying to destroy this country. In the meantime, street violence is erupting all across the U.S. At one point, a man named Aaron Danielson is shot twice in the chest and killed. We also have the instance during the Summer of Love where a man in Austin driving an Uber is approached by an extremist with a rifle at low ready, who he shoots and kills. That man is now in prison. Those are not the only instances of death that occurred. You had the Chaz, where far-left extremists created an autonomous zone. And did you forget the point at which the security forces of the autonomous zone opened fire on a white SUV, unloading hundreds of rounds over the span of a few minutes, killing a couple teenagers. There's also the George Floyd autonomous zone. None of these are to imply that we are in an active civil war, just that it's entirely possible and the escalation is happening right before us. I think perhaps Stephen Marsh is correct when he says civil strife. Okay. Where are we now? An election is held. There's widespread accusations of fraud. One faction says no, one faction says yes. It doesn't matter what you think is true. People tell me I'm wrong. That's fine. Maybe I'm wrong. Others say it's a bunch of conspiracy theory nonsense. Some say it's true and the left is trying to hide it and cover it up. Doesn't matter. The fact is, there are two prevailing worldviews. The overwhelming majority of Republicans believe the election was stolen and Joe Biden is illegitimate. The overwhelming majority of Democrats believe that Donald Trump stole the election and that his presidency was illegitimate, thus justifying all of the actions they took and the actions they're taking now. Where are we at today? Perhaps we'll avert a civil war if Donald Trump whimpers, bows his head, and crawls into the Fulton County jail crying, saying, I guess I lost. Maybe Donald Trump will just give up and surrender. Maybe Jenna Ellis and Mark Meadows will just quiver and whimper as they're brought into a jail cell that the left laments as being despicable, decrepit, a crypt where people die. Maybe they'll remand Trump. Maybe they won't. I don't know. All of this is happening right before your eyes. It's never happened before in American history. So call it whatever you want. I don't care. But here's what I do think. Why the mockery from the left over the idea of civil war now? Why are there even some conservatives saying it's irresponsible for me to say, despite the fact that many others have been saying it before me, that many others have been calling it out in louder ways? Well, I'll tell you two things. Many of these conservatives, they're pro-DeSantis, despise and fear the idea of saying civil war only now, despite the fact I've been saying this for years, because they know they've lost. And they're hoping they can avoid the genocide phase. So they're going to come out and say, no, calm down, everyone. Just submit. I am not saying there should be violence. Quite the opposite. I'm saying that there should be legal challenges in every possible way. And that Donald Trump should win the presidency, or maybe Vivek or something, or Ron DeSantis. And then we got the corruption. That's the most appropriate path to victory. The Democrats are engaging in the actions they're engaging in because they're losing and they're terrified. Seriously. You look at Target, their sales collapsed because of the Pride merchandise. It's a story I'll cover later. You have Sound of Freedom surpassing Indiana Jones. You have Bud Light's collapse. Yeah, we're winning this one. That's why they're engaging in serious acts of violence. But you have Democrats and leftists laughing and mocking the idea of civil war. Why? Because they're hoping that they can accelerate everything, that they can arrest their political opponents without any kind of opposition. That's why they say, no, what a stupid idiot. Haha, mock the idiot. It's a powerful technique. Try and ridicule someone. I'm sorry to say, I don't care what you think. To the crackpots, to the people who are trying to create some kind of neo-Marxist revolution, your opinions mean nothing to me. And these anti-Trump neocons, sorry, your opinions mean nothing to me as well. I'm going to say what I think. There are a lot of people who say, Tim, you shouldn't say that anyway, even if you think it's true. And I'm like, whatever, man. There are a lot of personalities who supported Donald Trump and turned on him because they fear going to prison, because they celebrated his election fraud claims. They celebrated January 6th. They encouraged people to go to D.C. and now they think they're going to get arrested next. I think it's probably true they'll get arrested next. Some people have said, well, eventually that's you, Tim. Eventually you get arrested. Dude. If it escalates to the point of true civil conflict, ain't nobody safe for nothing. They'll make up charges against anybody, justify whatever they want. And therein lies the point. I'm going to keep saying what I think is happening. I don't fear anything. It's happening. Whatever. It is what it is. We must have peaceful, nonviolent civil disobedience. We must have ballot harvesting, ballot chasing. People must register more people to vote. One of the most important things I've heard is you must encourage everyone you know to sign up for X, Twitter, to get on the platform. Don't make it political. Don't tell them to support Trump or whatever. The actual most brilliant thing I've heard. People often ask me, how do I get people to understand it? And it's simple. Just say, hey, you should sign up for Twitter because I'm on there. I post stuff. You'll hear a lot. And they'll say, well, how did you, what's going on with Trump? And I'll be like, look, you'll hear from the people calling him out like right away when they post. You should do it. Sign up. This actually exposes them to a wide array of information. I don't know where we're going, my friends. I can only tell you where we're at. And the big question I have for all of you in the comments below, should Trump surrender? What if Trump doesn't surrender? What if he does? What if he surrenders and the judge and the DA say Trump should be remanded to custody and not allowed to leave because he will flee? The Democrat DA, the Jack Smith, already argued Trump is a flight risk. He is a billionaire with properties all over the world and several jets and helicopters. He can just get on a plane and fly away, and you can't stop him. Any other fugitive goes to the airport, they'll know he's there, and they'll apprehend you. Donald Trump, he can just walk onto his plane. There's nothing you can do about it. He can say, I'm getting on a plane to Georgia, and then afterwards I'm going to fly back to Bedminster or Mar-a-Lago, and they say, okay. And then once the plane is in the air, Trump can say, divert to El Salvador. They can't stop him. So what if they say, now that Trump has surrendered, we will not release him? I wouldn't put it past him. I'm going to leave it there. There's a lot more to talk about. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.